here. Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I am so thrilled to be joined by just some incredible beings that are doing extraordinary things for the planet. And they also happen to be like really wonderful friends of mine as well. David 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and 𝗔𝗂𝗍𝗍𝗏𝗏. I hope I said that right. And I want to first thank you for being here. And then I'm going to read a little bit about them. And we're going to just dive into just everything about frequency and the project that is underway that David has launched and all his amazing discoveries. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Laura, for having us. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you. And I follow everything you do that I can see out there. And I saw when you disappeared into the void at one point. And we know
right.
why that happened.
Right. And here we are. We keep bouncing back. Oh, it's great to be with you guys. So yeah, I'm going to share a little bit about them. I'm not going to read their full bios, but yeah, David 𝗬𝗏𝗏 started Lightstream Technologies in Sedona, Arizona in 2007 with his wife, Crystal 𝗬𝗏𝗏. They developed the company from the ground up with their own designs and technology. David 𝗬𝗏𝗏 is the inventor of the technology, a well-known self-taught scientist. Crystal is a jewelry designer. Fred Shute and Chris Paul are their jewelers who handcraft the Lightstream pendants. And also wands and staffs, and helped David develop the style of the wands and staff. I mean, there's so much to him. I mean, he studied meditation, yoga, things connected to, nutrition and health and well-being, going on a vegetarian diet for a while, studied world religions, ancient history, physics, math, astronomy, alternative zero-point energies for over 40 years. I know a lot of people are already familiar with him and know the genius that he is, and so much gratitude for all that you've done and all your amazing work. And let me share about 𝗍𝗏𝗏. She is now David 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏's, she's a part of David 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 Lightstream Harmonics, and she's the head of the sales and service department and leads the Lightstream community. There's so many interesting things, in her bio about just her journey, and I would love to dive into it and share, but I'll probably hand it over to her to kind of pick out like what feels like most relevant to share like here and now. But they've been working together, and you're like totally into the metaphysics, philosophy, world faiths, and their texts. You've been an editor, reviewer, and researcher for scholarly texts too. And she's a singer. She loves to vocalize, and a psychic once told her that she would be instrumental in healing people with sound. So this is what we're really going to dive into, is just frequency. And
it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking, like, if Laura gave it back to me, what exactly would I say? And that is truly that, yeah, a psychic once told me that I would be able to heal humanity with sound. And at that time, I thought it would be singing, because I love to sing. And then when I joined David 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏, I realized, no, it's about frequency. It's David's products. It's David's technology that's bringing frequency to the world. And that's how I'm helping heal humanity, through David's products and through frequency. So it was just a real realization when I joined his team.
Oh, that's so amazing. And what a great just collaboration this is with you both. So I want to start off with this question. How is frequency used to accelerate enlightenment and consciousness? And how is it used to like mind control and, create distortions that lead to all sorts of health issues and all sorts of problems in our world? So take it away.
Take it away, Freddie. Even though my name's Freddie, but so if you go way back to the original way that Jesus prayed the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, which is the language he spoke. He didn't speak English, and we don't know if he spoke Latin, which is the language of the Roman Empire. But the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic is all about frequency. It's Jesus never addressed a man in the sky called his father ever. He said, "O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms with sound, light, and vibration." So he's addressing, "O thou from whom who fills the universe with sound, light, and vibration. May you touch me in my utmost holiest. Let your will come true in all that is material and dense." So the original language in Aramaic, which is early Hebrew, by the way, is all about connecting to sound and frequency. And so there, I have literally calculated tens of thousands of frequencies, actually calculated them myself, which is a simple mathematical formula where you take the speed of light in any unit of measure, feet, inches, or metric, divided by the wavelength in the same unit of measure to calculate an electromagnetic frequency. So I've calculated all of the frequencies of the great pyramids of Egypt as a crystal oscillator, the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, and the Holy of Holies when it was a tabernacle at the time of Moses. I've calculated the frequencies of the staff of Moses and Aaron and the staffs of the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses. And basically the way you do that is you can Google this on the internet. You just Google antennas and how they work. And a monopole antenna, which is what most of our early, like if you remember driving in the countryside in America in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, you'd see these massive towers next to a little, office building that was a radio station. And the height of that tower, which is the antenna, produces a wavelength coming off of it that's exactly 4 times its height. So it's a ratio of 1:4. So all you would do is tune on your AM or FM dial to the frequency of that station, and everybody is hearing the music and the broadcast. So that's how radio broadcasts work. But as frequencies got higher, radio station towers got smaller. Remember when cell phones came out, you had, you'd be in a nightclub and there'd be some guy with this massive antenna on his cell phone. And if 2 people were on their different cell phones, they could hear each other because the antenna was so tall and the wavelength is 4 times the height. So when the wavelengths crossed each other, you could hear somebody else on your phone. And then the same thing happened when you got those cordless phones with that little antenna sticking out of the top of it. You could hear your neighbor sometimes. And so you're on a call and there's somebody else on your call. But as the frequency got higher and the antennas got smaller and smaller and smaller, basically you couldn't hear your neighbors anymore. It got much more pure because frequencies got higher. But actually the electric, it's called 𝗟RI, the Electric Power Research Institute did studies to see if these high frequency radio bands and microwaves could cause cancer, leukemia, Down syndrome in children. And they found out that basically, even though their studies were inconclusive, it was highly probable that a lot of cancers and leukemias and Down syndrome were most likely related in some way to frequency. So we knew that frequency there's beneficial frequencies that open up doorways to consciousness. So I was on a hunt. I've been on a hunt for 20 years calculating frequencies, and I was looking for frequencies that were beneficial. And so when I looked at the height of the staff of Moses, and that took me years to decode the height, I would say that would be a God frequency, right? A God frequency coming off his staff at a very particular height. And I found it exactly what the height of his staff was, because the Bible tells us it lay in the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant is 2.5 cubits, but you have to get the right cubit. And if you don't have the right cubit, you have the wrong frequency. So then we started building staffs that are as per the instructions of the Bible. And the Bible literally says that God told Moses to put a coiled brass fiery serpent on a pole, and that was his staff. Of course, that's a very simple explanation, but that's how radio was born. When Tesla demonstrated radio for the first time in the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, he literally put a coil of brass, which is copper, on a pole, and he made two of them, and they communicated with each other back and forth. So that was the beginning of radio. And then the U.S. Supreme Court rules June 21st, 1943, that Tesla, Sir Oliver Lodge, and Stone, and Lodge was a mystic. Lodge was a spiritual mystic who believed that radio and frequencies could give you communication with the spirit realm. He literally believed that, and he's one of the true fathers of radio. So I started, calculating frequencies. I mean, thousands of them. I've calculated the frequencies of all the 9 planets, the moons. I've calculated the frequencies of almost any star you can think of based on the radius of that star. So I've developed musical tones and scales for Pleiades, Alpha Centauri, Pegasus, the Orion's belt. I mean, literally almost any star you can think of, I've calculated musical scales and octaves for those locations in the universe. And then about 10 years ago, this conspiracy theory came out that had a lot of validity to it, that our music scale was detuned by the Rockefellers, because after this new world is born and the British lose the Battle of Independence over, America was originally a British colony. When the Spanish came here and discovered it in 1492, and although there were Vikings that were here way earlier than that, it was not America. It actually originally became a British colony. And that's what the Battle of Independence was about, the blue coats and the red coats. And the blue coats happened to be the British, which are the Democrats today. But anyway, so what happens is this Battle of Independence in 1776 marks, so you go from 1492 to 1776, and then George Washington becomes the first president of the United States, which means it's the beginning of the new world that would not tax people for recompensation for labor, which is biblical, because the God in the Bible says you don't charge people usury, and you don't tax them because they're free people, right? That's actually in the Bible, believe it or not. So what George Washington what happens to him on the battlefield is he has this vision. He goes into this altered state and he sees two angels. He sees a dark angel who shows him there'll be 3 great battles, and the third one almost destroys America completely. And the positive angel shows him all of these states, subsidiary republics that are born into the Great Republic, and that America would become this new world because of these liberties and freedoms that are given to them. And then it becomes the vision to build, because Washington is a Freemason. Now, when I say the word Mason, immediately that polarizes people, because some people are taught that Masons are evil. And you're right, there are dark Masons, but there are also illuminated Masons whose intention is to liberate us, right? So when you look at the slavery and the oppression of the British and the European, systems, going all the way back to the Turkish Ottoman Empire, to the Roman Empire, to Alexander the Great's empire, all of them were about oppressing the people. People were never, ever free. And so when this new land is discovered with the First Nations, Native Americans living here, and they decide we need space to create this concept called freedom. And it took almost 300 years for America to be born with the Declaration of Independence that is literally written by Jefferson and some influences from Washington. So when Washington becomes the first president, these Masons have a vision that they're going to bring what is actually a frequency transmitter, which is the Washington Monument. And when I looked at the monument, I immediately recognized, with this new wisdom that I had gained, and I did take physics in my school years, and I did take it to the college level. And then I also worked for Nobel Prize winning physicists in nuclear fusion and nuclear energy, nuclear safety, landmine and bomb detection. And I literally was handed equations by my bosses whose level of physics was way over my head. And I got the answers correctly. And I actually never told my boss that I was a physics student in my younger years because I was a little embarrassed because my level of understanding physics was very simple compared to nuclear physicists. But nevertheless, I knew how to calculate frequencies. And that has been my goal. So when I looked at the Washington Monument, I said, that's a monopole. And it's powered by the Tesla-Schumann resonance, which oscillates around the Earth at the speed of light all day long. And the Schumann resonance, the Tesla-Schumann resonance, changes depending on where you're standing on the globe. So I said that would be powering the monument because the monument has a steel core and it has semiconductive marble casing stones. So I immediately took its exact height, which is 555 feet, 5.125 inches. And when I saw the 5125, I went, oh my God, I know what that means. Because that measurement, if you use the most accurate measurement that Peter Le Mesurier, who wrote The Great Pyramid Decoded in 1977, one of the greatest mathematicians in France, took on the Great Pyramid of Egypt, I found that the war over the cubit was resolved not by the rulers that the Egyptians had, because the two rulers they did find had a discrepancy between 20.6 and 20.8 something inches per royal cubit. And when I saw that, I said, the Egyptians didn't build this pyramid because they don't know an absolute perfect royal cubit. So when you take the pyramid itself, Le Mesurier found in over 14 places in the interior, 20.605 inches was a royal cubit. And when you calculate the staff of Moses and Aaron and the 12 biblical staffs laying inside the Ark of the Covenant at 2.5 cubit, it comes to 51.5125 inches. Noah's Ark comes to 515.125 feet. And that's important because Wyatt's crew, I forget whether it's James or Wyatt, or I forget his first name, they found the remains of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat. It was 515 feet with a tape measure. And I said, Noah used the same cubit that the Egyptians used, that the builder of the pyramid used. So again, why would the Hebrews have this distinctively different cubit? So when I saw the monument, I saw 5125 at the end. It's 515 feet, 5.125 inches. And this is the final measurement of the height of the monument. And I said, that's the number that's at the end of everything. You take the height of Solomon's temple, 30 cubits, 51.5125 feet, and there's that 5125. So I did the math. I'll show you what it looks like, actually. We'll do a share screen, and we'll go to this. So there, what do you see on the screen? Because I have so many. Do you see the image of
the monument frequency, and it's the monument.
Right. So what you do is you take the exact height of the monument times 4 to get its wavelength. And its wavelength is nearly exactly double 1111, because double 1111 is 2222. But it comes to 222.170833 feet. So you take the speed of light in feet, which I use precise measurements of the speed of light, not the ones in Wikipedia, and you divide it by the wavelength of the monument, and you get a frequency of 442.709.351. So that's your peak frequency on the monument. But guess what? There's a thing called an octave, and an octave in music is times 2 to go up in frequency and divided by 2 to go down. So we're going to go to share screen. I'm going to put in this number 4, because you got to see this happen. 442.709.3519308. This is a really long decimal. 08.
We can't see your calculator, David.
Oh, you will in a second. You will in a second. So now I go stop share, and then I'm going to go back to share, and you're going to see my calculator. Okay, so there's my calculator. That's the frequency of the height of the monument. But we're going to check, because it's actually a 432 octave tuner. We're going to divide it by 2 and come down 10 octaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 432 hertz. 432.3333 hertz. And the 3333 is a masterful code number. So whoever designed this thing for George Washington, which is Robert Mills and 2 other individuals, apparently influenced by Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, the greatest political document ever created. Did they know this was going to transmit 432 octaves? Because when you go to, okay, now you go into 432 conspiracy theory, and which this conspiracy theory goes back over 10 years. And that is that after the Battle of Independence in 1776, and shortly thereafter, Washington becomes the first president of the United States, the British desire to control the New World was so intense that they send their bankers, the Rothschilds, and there were several bankers that were sent, because America was founding farmers' banks. And the farmers' banks didn't charge usury, which is interest, for loaning money. They were building the New World, and people were not taxed for recompensation for labor. They were only corporations could be taxed on profits, but not individuals. So Americans were becoming wealthy. They were building the New World, and the states were being born one at a time. And therefore, the British came in to destroy this, but they not only wanted to usurp, take over control of the banking system, which they did, which they absolutely did, but they wanted to control the masses. And so the French and many Europeans, in fact, even the famous Italian composer, I'm trying to remember his name, they all used 432. So 432 is middle A. So at the bottom of A, B, C, D, F, G, which are all the main notes on the modern music scale, plus your 5 flats and sharps, you have 12 tones. But you really have 7 tones and 5 semitones. So middle A used to be 432. And then it was changed to 440 by the Rockefellers. And they made sure all music in America was detuned at 440. Now notice the monument is 432. They're all 432 octaves. It radiates perfect 432 octaves all the way to the top.
Why is there so much darkness in DC if there's these high frequencies?
Okay, watch what happens, because that's the ultimate question. Because one of the questions has been that the monument is an Egyptian obelisk to the goddess Isis and her husband Osiris, and somehow that means darkness. But watch what happens. So let me go to share screen. And the moment, here's a chart I created, that the moment the monument is coming to completion, all the greatest inventions that changed the entire world did not happen anywhere else on the planet. Many of these scientists came to America. They were within a certain wavelength radius of the monument, and they changed the world. Edison invents the phonograph in 1877. The monument is coming to completion. It's completed absolutely in 1884, but it's built between 1848 and 1884. But it's actually really, it's almost complete, which means it's already transmitting as a monopole when Edison invents the phonograph, and the light bulb is invented 2 years later. Tesla comes to America from former Yugoslavia, and he doesn't really know anything yet. He comes to work for Edison, and suddenly Tesla, and this is in New Jersey, Edison's lab is in New Jersey. So he's at a very you know, the way a monopole transmits is the energy field gets weaker and weaker the more distant you become from it. But what you see happens is everything gets invented once that thing goes up. Direct current, 1882. Tesla invents radio in the Chicago World's Fair, 1893. Sir Oliver Lodge invents EMF, 1894. This is all done in the upper eastern Atlantic seaboard. These scientists came from all over the world, but they didn't do anything in their countries. It all happens here. Tesla invents remote control, 1898. Bell, who is Canadian, but he's really a Scottish, Irish, you know, immigrant to Canada. He invents the telephone in 1877, right with the monuments in its final stages. Edison and Dixon invent the motion picture, 1888, 4 years after the monument goes up. Vladimir Zworykin invents the cathode ray tube in 1917. Farnsworth and Zworykin are really the fathers of television. They invent TV. And then this is all happening in the same region. The Wright brothers invent flight in 1903. Carl Jansky invents radio astronomy in 1930 in Bell Labs in New Jersey. And Braden, Shockley, and Bardeen invent the transistor in 1947 right there in Bell Labs in New Jersey. And then Nick Holyonak invents the LED, 1962. George Heilemer, LCD TV, 1968. And Robert Kahn and Vincent Cerf invent the first internet right there in the same place, same location, which is the beginning of the internet. And the Mitchell invents true all flat panel TV. That's again right there. Martin Cooper, Motorola invent the first cell phone. Now, why aren't these inventions occurring? Like, how come one didn't come from England? How come one didn't come from New Zealand? How come one did? In fact, even Einstein, as brilliant as we think he was living in Germany, he did all his work in New Jersey, all of it. He was not a trained physicist. He did not take physics in school. He was a patent clerk. And he came to America because he actually writes this famous letter to Roosevelt urging the fission of uranium to build a bomb that could end the war. And if the Americans didn't do it first, the Germans were going to do it. So he comes to, again, America, New Jersey, and he does all of this work that leads to the development of the first atomic bomb, which when dropped on the Japanese enemies who attacked Pearl Harbor, and this was a form of revenge that was never paid in its day. Those two bombs created a form of peace. I won't call it peace. I would call it terror, but it's a type of terror that prevented further wars. In fact, there has never been, since the Battle of Independence, a full-blown war on American soil, ever. And when you go back to the period of the Native American Indians, they had lots of wars. Of course, they had periods of peace between their tribes. I mean, I've studied this. I've read volumes of Native American Indian history, so I'm not speaking off the top of my head. They had wars, believe me. But we have had no wars since 1776. World War I did not touch American soil, and World War II did not touch American soil. There was no war here. There was preparation for war, but what happened with the development of that bomb is the whole world was scared stiff. And so what I'm saying is when the monument goes up, it's transmitting 432 octaves into the nervous systems of everyone. And it seems like, and there's more inventions that I've noted. Now, once the patents on those inventions were distributed worldwide, then you had spin-offs. You had purifications of inventions. Then at Stanford University, they purified the transistor. But I'm saying the core inventions, which is a form of enlightenment in the Western understanding of the word enlightenment, they caused an epiphany that changed the whole world. Because it didn't happen in Africa, it didn't happen in India, it didn't happen in New Zealand, it didn't happen in Austria, it didn't happen in Bavaria, it didn't happen anywhere. Flight was born here. Henry Ford invents the automobile and the automobile assembly line right there. In fact, his first car was 1896. So the monument's finished in 1884, absolutely finished. And it was a three-wheeler actually, and before he went on to four-wheelers. So how can frequency be that profound? And that brings me to a study done by the National Institute of Health, actually. And let me just find the study so I can see where it is on my share screen. There it is. Okay, so this study, and it's amazing that this study even occurred. The very fact that the National Institute of Health did a double-blind crossover pilot study on the effects of music tuned to 440 versus 432 is miraculous, because they shouldn't care about conspiracy theories, right? Well, that's how powerful the conspiracy theory over 432 became. It got the attention of the National Institute of Health. So in this study, there's 33 volunteers not suffering from acute or chronic diseases, a room dedicated to listening to music in an Italian city, it says. Isn't that interesting? Because the early Italians used 432. And in this study, they measure blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, physical and emotional sensations, for example, fatigue and stress, and levels for concentrating during the listening session. And guess what the results were? They saw heart rate and blood pressure go down. Fatigue and stress went down. Okay, they considered it insignificant, whereas anybody who understands that just listening to music a couple of times, going back and forth, if it had this effect on the majority of the group of volunteers, what would happen to an entire population, I'm saying, when you have proof that 440 stresses people out slightly more than 432. What that tells you is exactly what the conspiracy theory postulates, is that the Rockefellers, in their initiative to not only take over the American banking system with the Rothschilds and all of the subsidiary, the Mellons and all of them, that if you read Eustace Mullen's book, Secrets of the Federal Reserve, you'll know the names of all the banking families that came to take over control of America. But this is how they take control of the mind. Because if you increase the stress in the blood pressure and the heart rate, people can't relax. And if you can't relax, you can't experience bliss consciousness. You're in a state of hyper stress mode all the time. So all of our music, this is proof. This National Institute of Health study is proof that there is a physiological response between both scales. So now let's go back to the monument. And because people think there are people that think it's evil, and there's people that think it's a beautiful thing. So the math proves it's absolutely a 432 tuner, because its peak frequency 442,000. Now I find that interesting, because 432, 442. See what I mean? Is it a progression? 442, 709.351 divided by a musical octave 10 times gives you 432.333 hertz. Now, there's no way electrodynamics can change. The speed of light is the speed of light, even though it has a tiny deviancy constantly, but that tiny deviancy would not change its frequency. There's no way the monument could be used for evil purposes unless you hijacked it. And that can be done. You can, there is a way to hijack a monopole and change its frequency and send out the wrong frequency, right? So,
wow.
So that's just,
Yeah, there's something I want to share when you're sharing the screens because.
Okay, let me stop share because I'm going to continue. I want you to
keep going. Keep going. You can keep going. I can share it towards the end. It's just, do you want me to just show you real quick?
Yeah, show me real quick. Yeah.
All right, hold on a sec. Share screen. Okay, so this kind of thing. These different projects, MK Ultra, guys, can you be quiet? Different projects, MK Ultra type stuff. And if one looks at it, you know, it's like frequency range, VHF, HF, UHF, modulated at ELF, transmission and reception through television and radio antenna, power lines, mattress spring coils, modulation of 60 hertz wiring. So all these different things connected with MK Ultra projects, you know, Project Phoenix 2, Montauk project, you know, and then there's Project, you know, this all seems to be based in frequency distortions and how that also correlates with mind control and 5G. So I just wanted to throw that in when you're ready to maybe want to.
There's a good diagram, and an article came out in mainstream news a couple of years ago. I remember posting it on my Facebook that actually proved that the government was doing experiments on the population and transmitting disruptive frequencies into our nervous system. You see, because your spine is calcium, which is a metal, it's actually an antenna. So therefore, you can transmit frequencies into the human electrical nervous system and its calcium-based antenna and disrupt it. But you can also give it beneficial frequencies, which I absolutely believe the math proves the Washington Monument did, which caused this massive awakening that gave America the cutting edge. Why did every great new invention happen in America first? Why didn't it happen in New Zealand? Like the internet, you know, you go all the way back. I can show you way more inventions than this.
So
the
David,
rest of the world was
do you believe they knew what they were doing when they built the monument in order for it to be 432, or do you believe it was divine intervention that did that?
Well, if you read the story of George Washington's mystical experience, which was published on Snopes, that it would more seem like he was guided, and he gives the information to Jefferson, and Jefferson, you know, it gets passed on to the architects, and Mills is one of the architects. In fact, let's go. I'm trying to find my my bookmark page on the monument here because you can actually see this.
And definitely did to get back in the flow. And I know I shared some slides, but you had another one up that you hadn't really discussed. I kind of jumped.
Oh yeah, there's a big one. Yeah, because it connects perfectly to the Great Pyramid. So let's go there first, because the monument is, when you see this next slide, I mean, this slide is it's really mind-blowing when you look at this, but this particular slide here, slide 5, there you go. So let me go to my share screen again and then pick this slide. This slide is right here. So when you look at the photo on the left, which is the photo on the left is an aerial shot that shows the 𝗵𝗂𝗍𝗆, and the monument is in the center of the 𝗵𝗂𝗍𝗆. And again, there are people who call that a dark symbol because it looks like a penis in a vagina, and they say that's sexual and that's bad. I don't know how that's bad because that's how babies are born, but nevertheless, whoever did that knows the secret of what I'm about to tell you. Is if you take the height of the monument, and the monument, if you know this symbol of the secret of the Masons, their symbol is one of these, a compass, right? Which you make circles with, right? So look at the symbol of a Mason, and you'll see the compass is the middle symbol, right? So now let me go back to screen share, because the monument, that's what the monument is. And when you open up your compass, which is the height of the monument at 555.427 feet, which is the same as 555 feet, 5.125 inches, to understand the height of a 𝗵𝗂𝗍𝗆 that's formed by two circles, that height you basically divide it by 86.611,062,335,382%. So that's a hard number to get, by the way. It's not easy to find that on the internet. I didn't get it on the internet. I got it in a good math book because I wanted it accurate to multiple decimals. So you take the monument's height divided by that percent to get the height of your 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces, and it comes to 481 feet. Now, if you go to Wikipedia, they'll tell you the finished height of the Great Pyramid is 481 feet, but it's actually 480.69 feet, according to 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄𝗏 in his math. But nevertheless, that's accurate to 99.935% to the finished height of the Great Pyramid, according to 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄𝗏. Now, how could that be? How could the monument, and look at the 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces on the lawn again. So whoever put the 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces in the lawn geometry knows this. They know the monument is the Great Pyramid's mommy or daddy, because its ratio is perfectly proportional to a 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces. And guess what a 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces means? The 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces is, okay, this gets really incredible. So I go to share screen again, and I go to my 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces diagram, and a 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces has a mathematical coded ratio in the height to the breadth of the 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄 Pisces is 153 to 265. And you can Google this. Guess what 153 is? It's the numerology of Mary Magdalene's name. But it's way more than that. Okay, I'm going to go to this diagram here. And this diagram here, I was sitting in meditation one day recently. This was in late winter, just before, spring and Easter. And I hear Jesus's voice. Jesus appeared to me in person, shining like 1,000 suns, about 5 different periods of my life, starting in 1994. And I wrote a book called, Face to Face with Jesus Christ, that my publisher stole, that's still on Amazon today. So anyway, I hear the voice of Jesus. He said, take the height of the Great Pyramid at 469 feet divided by pi. So I do it, and it equals 153. I went, oh my God. 153 is not only the number in the ratio to 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄𝗏 Pisces, which is the symbol of a woman's yoni, which is where children are born. It's where they're conceived, and it's where when I saw my own children being born, it's when they crown and they come out, it forms the 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄𝗏 Pisces shape. And it also is the number of fish the disciples caught when Jesus resurrected. So when Christ resurrects, this is in John 21:11, the disciples can't catch any fish, and they don't know who this man on the beach is who is telling them to cast their nets to the other side. They eventually realize, oh my God, it's Jesus. He's resurrected. And they catch 153 fish. So why is that significant? Because the shape of the fish is the 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄𝗏 Pisces. It also means Mary Magdalene in Greek gematria, which is ancient numerology. So, and Magdalene's family owned the fishing industry in the Sea of Galilee. They were very wealthy fish merchants. She was no prostitute. She was his wife. So the 153 is so deeply symbolic. And for Jesus to tell me this, whispering in my ear, nobody's ever decoded this before. I've searched all over the internet. Nobody knew 𝗍𝘂𝗶𝗍𝗄𝗏's absolute measurement on the finished height of the Great Pyramid in feet is 480.69 divided by pi, which is the resolution of a circle, 3.14159.265, equals 150.
You get a whole number.
So this is really deep because it goes all the way back to the monument, because Jesus says in Acts 4:10 through 12, he declares himself the missing cornerstone or the missing capstone, right? And being raised as a child in Egypt, and his father being an architect and a builder, would have absolutely known there was no capstone on the top of the Great Pyramid, because that's where he was raised. And that would mean that Jesus is actually calling himself the actual capstone itself in the Gospels. Now, the Great Pyramid is also built entirely on the golden ratio, which is 1 to 1.618. Now notice Matthew 16:18 is 1.618. It's 16:18, 1618. And what the gospel says is, and I also say to you, Peter, and Peter in Greek is Petra, which means rock, actually.
Rock.
And on this rock, which means on this Peter, I will build my church, and the gates of hell, Hades, will not prevail against it, which means the gates of hell will not prevail against the golden ratio, which means Jesus is declaring himself the incarnation of the capstone in the Gospels, which means the pyramid is a tuner and temple to the God that Jesus represents. So it's all coded. The Gospels are coded with math, and again, that correspond to frequencies of enlightenment. So the fact that the pyramid corresponds to the Washington Monument, because the monument creates a 𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗶 whose height is the exact height of the finished Great Pyramid of Egypt. So I don't know how anybody can, I can take any mathematician, I don't know how anybody could argue with me at this point and say the monument is evil, because it is absolutely 432. I can argue with anybody who has a conspiracy theory that it's evil, but can you hijack a monopole transmitter, which has a steel frame grounded into the earth? Absolutely, you can hijack it. Absolutely, you could cause a distorted frequency. You could interfere with its natural frequency and cause a distortion, and to be transmitted. And when I measured also the Capitol, the dome of the Capitol, I don't have these measurements in front of me, but the dome of the Capitol diameter times pi, so you get its circumference, and right between the inner wall and the roof, the outer wall of the dome, is a frequency of pi, 3.14159 megahertz. Absolutely perfect. How did they know that? And then the breadth of the Capitol, on the inner dimension is so close to 432 royal cubits, and you have to use the right royal cubit. It's so close, but I can't get anyone online to get me a precise measurement. I just get this measurement, and it doesn't tell you whether it's inner or outer, but I'm telling you, it is so close. And again, because I would need a laser. Nobody has measured the Capitol. And again, who designed these buildings? Who designed the Capitol dome to resonate a frequency of pi? And right now behind me, my little frequency box here is transmitting pi frequency through a huge coil on the other side of that wall, 24/7. And if you see the movie Contact with Carl Sagan and you read the book, which is way better than the movie, in the very end, when they not only go to Vega briefly, but there's actually several men and women, and they're all unclothed. They're naked, like they're in the Garden of Eden. They go to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and the intelligence in the middle of the Milky Way galaxy tells them that pi is the secret to the whole universe. so the Capitol is pi. It's freaking the wavelength is pi. It transmits a frequency of pi, but it's between the inner dome and the roof. That exact measurement is right there. So who did this? And then how did it all get so messed up, this new freed land? And that's where your first question comes in, Laura, is yes, there are frequencies that can cause and influence a person to reach enlightenment, and there's frequencies that can detune and destruct a human being. And that's 𝗍𝗂𝗍𝗆 and all of those mind control experiments.
Right. And then there's the whole 5G thing, if you want to kind of touch upon that too.
Yeah, and then when you get to, because I was doing math on 5G and I was looking, because there's a frequency, there's a point where you reach microwave frequencies that cause human cells to start heating up. And in fact, there was a study done, this was published in Yahoo News almost 10 years ago, that male sperm was mutating when men were using their laptops on their lap in 15 minutes. And that that mutation occurs because of radiant heat. And the higher you go in frequency, the higher electromagnetic frequencies cause heat in human cells. So it's not good to use your cell phone, except for in speaker mode, and putting it on the desk and then keeping it away from you. I've checked with my tri-field TF2 meter, and it seems safe about 1.5 feet away. But 5G is another thing. See, it's not just the amplitude of a signal that may or may not cause harm. It's the frequencies they choose to operate the internet on.
Right. So there's like the weaponized version. Some of these things could actually produce amazing results. And then we got like nanites and the whole spraying of the skies and the stuff that we've been breathing in and how that links into it. And of course, the jab. It seems, though, that we are powerful enough as humans, right? We were talking about intent before we went live, that somehow we can override some of this within our own being by really working with sound healing technologies and the kind of, tools and modalities that you've created, to offset or correct some of these distortions, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've come up with that's on 𝗏𝘃𝗏𝗀𝐻.co/initiation are 432 octave exercises. So you get headphones and you listen for 7 minutes, and you'll hear the first 432 octave come in, and a minute later you hear the second one, and you produce with your voice a vowel sound, an A, E, I, O, or U sound, and that matches the pitch you're hearing. So you slowly are tuning your nervous system, and it's good to do this twice a day, morning and night, to the 432 octaves. So what it does is all the chaos that you're getting from Wi-Fi and from the microwave towers, which to me right now are dark towers because they're not running the internet on what are known to be harmonic bands. And did you see this article? Here it is. I'll just put it up on the screen. I mean, is it okay to put a CNN article on the share screen or not? I don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so this article is shocking. This just came out last week. And this article is, how come I don't see it here on my share screen? This article I put on my Facebook wall shows that U.S. investigating possible mysterious directed energy attack near the White House. Did you see that one?
No. And while you're sharing, another kind of thought came through of like the whole Project Mockingbird and fake news and all the propaganda and false narratives and psychological operations and how that connects into these frequency patterns that are distorted. Like we have to almost give our belief system away to be totally compromised. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely. Like fake news. And to me, most of CNN is fake news. That's why it's funny to see this on CNN. U.S. investigating possible mysterious directed energy attack near the White House. And when this article first came out in the foreign press, it's hard for the United States to admit they're vulnerable and they don't have any means of detecting microwave beam weapons. But these attacks led to people getting severely debilitating symptoms that went on for years. And they happened within a certain perimeter of the White House. And so this shows exactly what we're talking about here today. It demonstrates in this article that these type of disturbing frequencies, and it says right here, a varying set of complaints that include ear popping vertigo, which is dizziness, pounding headaches, nausea, sometimes accompanied by piercing directional noise, which means piercing directional frequencies. So that means that they're admitting on CNN, probably one of the most heavily controlled propaganda media outlets in the world, that there's such a thing as a frequency weapon. So they're actually admitting it. And a lot of people didn't notice this. I put it on my Facebook, and it's like, they just kind of scroll right by it, but you don't understand what this means. It means that they're admitting this technology exists. There are organizations that can use this as a weapon, and they can use it anywhere, which is why you can actually get a microwave alarm detector, and you can set it up to an alarm. And if your house is under attack, guess what you do to prevent yourself from being harmed? You need a pole or one of my staffs, or a pole, if you can't afford one of those, cut to a very precise height, because its height determines its frequency. And you hold that pole and you stick it in the earth. And that grounds you and prevents you from getting injured by a microwave beam weapon. You have to be electrically grounded. That's how you do it. So you can also put up harmonic rods in your walls, which I teach people how to do, that are copper rods that are measured to very precise heights, and they're connected to electrical ground, so that if your house gets attacked, and this is, I have an individual, I can't name the person's name, who showed me pictures of, this person's been very outspoken on 5G, of severe radiation burns all over their body. I won't even say whether this person is male or female. And this person was very outspoken against 5G and nearly was killed. Now, that is what I mean. So the article on CNN proves, and in fact, some of the individuals in the CNN article are still injured to this day. They have permanent brain damage, which means if you're a non-preferred person in the fake news and the controlled media, they can take you out with a microwave beam weapon, but not if you got your pole. So I can give you an aluminum pole. It has to be cut to the precise height. I cut these with lasers, and keep it. I keep these next to my bed, because if you suddenly start getting vertigo, severely dizzy, you don't know what the heck's going on. If you don't have a meter to tell you that you're being hit by frequencies, you hold this, go outside and stick it in the earth. You're grounded. And the radiation, basically, when a person is grounded, it immediately goes to ground, and it doesn't cause brain damage and burn your nervous system. So this is how you protect yourself, which is probably one of the reasons why many of the ancients always had one of these things. And in fact, Jesus says in Mark 6:8 in your Bible, you can look this up, he tells the apostles when he disperses them, and he had 72 minor disciples and the 12 males and 7 women that were very close to him. He said, you can forget everything. No money in your purse, nothing, no food, but make sure you have your staff. Make sure you have your staff. That's what he said. That's in Mark 6:8. And there's a reason for that. There's a really deep reason for that. So it's all about frequency, right? The height of a monopole is, the wavelength is 4 times its height. The speed of light divided by the wavelength is the frequency. So that frequency is a harmonic. If you know how the true God, because there's 2 gods in the Old Testament, actually. There's an evil God. You can see Jesus, and this is in, I should actually read this because a lot of people don't know this, that Jesus is arguing with a bunch of Jews, and he's telling them, you're actually worshiping a God who's a liar and a murderer. And he's been a murderer.
It's like the Old Testament sort of demiurgic kind of lower creator God, and then all of a sudden something kind of shifted there, right?
Yeah, I'll show you exactly where this is. It's in John. It's in the book of John, and it's in John chapter 8. Read the whole chapter. And there's a scene where he's basically telling, because the Jews of his time were divided in their religion was not their religion was not unified. There were a group of Jews worshiping. If you read your Gnostic text, like the secret book of John, the Apocryphon of John, you see that there's this lower God who's an egotistical God, who's a jealous God and an angry God. His name is 𝗟𝘂𝗍𝗶. He has another name that's called, he goes by several names. And he even has his own angels, and he has an angel that's the copy of the Archangel Michael. He calls him Michael, but they're all evil.
But they're all like that. It's the Archon deal.
Right, they're the Archons as opposed to the Aeons. So now read Exodus 3:14. Now what is 3:14? That's pi. 3.14 is pi. And that's where God, the true God, tells Moses, I am that I am, which is the supreme universal I am self, right? But then when you go to Jesus in John chapter 8, he's arguing with this group of Jews, and he ends at the very end, he says, before Abraham was, I am. And the I am God is not a man, not a woman. It is a universal, infinite consciousness. And that's why Jesus in the original Lord's Prayer in Aramaic never addressed a person supposedly called the Father. He says, O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms with sound, light, and vibration. May you touch me in my utmost holies. He's not talking to a personal God. So neither is Moses, because Moses is speaking to the I am. And the Hindus actually call this the Atman, which means your true self awareness in God. And then they have the Paramatman, which means beyond the small self in God, which is a universal self. And that's why so that self actually ties into Native American Indian wisdom, because they actually, their names for it, I'm doing a whole study on this right now, on actually the name, like the name of the tetragrammaton, which you can't say because there's no vowels, but it's, some people call it Yahweh, right? Or Yahweh, or Jehovah, right? Because the Latins introduced the J. There's no J in Jesus's name either. In fact, if you look up Jesus's name, there are many cultures in the world today, including the Ukrainians, who don't use the J. It's Isa.
But doesn't that connect into the numerology and frequency, you know, with the number, or like the letters, right?
Right, like Mary Magdalene's name is like the ancient Hebrews had, and the ancient Greeks had numbers for every letter. Both of them did. So a name is a series of numbers, and the series of numbers are frequencies. So again, look in Genesis. Oh no, was that Genesis or Exodus? Where was that? Hang on a second. It was Exodus 3:14. That's pi, 3.14159. That's telling you I am who I am that I am is pi, the secret to the universe, right? So we were going into frequency, and there it is. The Bible is coded, absolutely coded. So Jesus in John 8, so let me just, I can tell you this exact phrase. He's arguing with these Jews, and he's telling him that your God is a murderer and a liar. And he's been a liar since the beginning. Can you imagine how they felt? Because they're blind. They're not enlightened. They don't know they're praying to this egotistical, angry war god, which is actually described very well in the Gnostic literature as 𝗟𝘂𝗍𝗶 or Sakla, and he goes by all these other names. So Jesus is trying to free them. And in fact, the prophet Elijah, which John the Baptist is said by Jesus to be the reincarnation of, because Jesus literally declared John the Baptist was Elijah, and Jesus calls out to Elijah on the cross, Eli, Eli. Again, there is no J. That's Latin. There is no J in the ancient Hebrew, which is Aramaic language. So Jesus is making the distinction. In fact, Elijah, which is really Elijah, which is who he calls out to on the cross, actually has a duel with the prophetess Jezebel and her husband, who was the king, and they're worshiping, really, they called him the Baal, the Baal. But again, 𝗟𝘂𝗶𝗏 goes by many names, and this is in the Secret Gospel of John. And basically, the duel proves that the Baal is not the God, the universal God, which is formless, which is infinite, right? Which is really an evil God. And so, in Jesus in John 8 gets into the same argument that the prophet Elijah did before him, and he's telling these Jews, "I'm sorry, but you're worshiping an evil God." And then they throw rocks at him, and then that's the end of it. But he does make the distinction, and that's really important, because that distinction gets, you got to look in the book of Isaiah chapter 19, where God tells the Egyptian people that there's a temple and a pillar to the Lord God in the border of the land of Egypt. So that proved that Egypt wasn't like this all evil cult, that Moses had a problem with Pharaoh because Pharaoh wanted to be God on earth and he wasn't God. And there were some people in Egypt that were worshiping the wrong way. And there were people in Egypt that had a temple to the true infinite God. And that is confirmed in what's called the Gnostic Christian Gospel, the Gospel of the Egyptians, which is a miraculous read. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read.
Well, when one looks at that, like the Isis and Osiris story, and then there's Set and Horus, and there seems to be sort of an evil connotation thrown into sort of these archetypes that we're all part of. I mean, and if you were going to continue, and I didn't mean to jump in, but it's like the Baphomet, the Dark Mother reversal. So you got like the 𝗵𝗏𝗀𝗃, sort of the ball, and then this Baphomet that seems to be the reversal of the Divine Mother, or a frequency distortion that has created facades where we're not getting the full story when it comes to the teachings of Christ and the relationship between Yeshua, Jesus Christ, and Mary Magdalene, and the whole concept of rewriting history, and making us more and more kind of dumbed down and tranced out, so that we continue to look outside of ourselves, when really the true teachings were for us to be the conduits of these greater energies, right? So a lot of the work that you guys are doing just seems to be restoring that divine template, or the ability for our energetic system to not be running these reversal codes. And with this next level of what we're seeing with this agenda, I mean, that's exactly what it seems.
It's very important what you're bringing out about the Baphomet. So when you look at Dan Brown's law symbol, here's an image of the pentagram city within Washington, D.C. The upside down pentagram is the evil Baphomet, but notice the monument is not inside the Baphomet. The tip of the Baphomet goes to the White House, but the monument is outside of the Baphomet. So what probably happened here is, again, the battle if you look in your Old Testament and you look at the clarification that Jesus gives in John 8, there is the evil God interwoven inside of the supreme God, the infinite God, but they're not well distinguished in the scriptures, right? There are certain times in the Old Testament where you can see the evil God at play, sending people into battle, and, people getting killed, being favored over another. That's the jealous, angry God that Jesus is warning these young Jews about in John 8. And again, most Christians don't understand John 8 because they haven't read the Secret Gospel of John. So again, when this Enlightenment transmitter, this monopole transmitter, which again is confirmed in Isaiah chapter 19, that God has a pillar at the border of the land of Egypt. Pillar is an obelisk. That's what a pillar is. And the pillar is a frequency transmitter. So therefore, you plant this harmonic 432 transmitter in Washington, and the evil God comes in and wants to take over the scene, right? And because the evil is so obvious, don't assume that the whole thing is evil. This duality goes back to the mythic Garden of Eden, right? It goes all the way back to the mythic Garden of Eden.
We have knowledge, right? That's been targeted with mind control, because we have to find self-knowledge, right? Sorry, keep going though.
No, I like what you're saying, because what Jesus told me in person is the mythic of God warning Adam and Eve not to take in the knowledge of good and evil or you'll die is true. That we inadvertently took side with the serpent, thinking it was a good thing that we know the difference between good and evil. But wait a minute, God told you don't take in that knowledge that causes you to judge each other, that I'm right and you're wrong, or my interpretation of this is correct and yours is wrong. See, that's the poison. Good and evil doesn't exist in heaven because God's good dwarfs human egotistical good. So we put this paradox, you take in this knowledge, it's a paradox, it's unsolvable. No 1,000 humans can agree absolutely this is right and this is wrong on anything. Even if you go to the scene of a car accident and a police officer said, how many people saw the accident? What happened? They all disagree, right? Because the knowledge of good and evil causes us to go into a polarity matrix, which is duality, which is the birth of war. So Cain and Abel are the offspring of this consciousness, and they get into a battle and one of them dies. I forget which one of them gets killed. But the point is, the conflict is born. Good and evil is conflict. It's the entire thing. So when Jesus said in Matthew 6:22, if thine eye be single, he didn't say if thine eye be good. He said if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. So the light comes when the duality ends. And when judgment ends. Judgment ends. So again, why did America, after that monument was erected, there has never been a war on its soil? There hasn't. There's been conflict. There's been some murders, but there's never been a war. That's a long time, considering this continent before George Washington had lots of wars. The Native Indians had lots of wars. They were peaceful at times. They went through periods of peace, but their food sources were nomadic, so they ran into each other and competed over food sources, and they fought. Right? So they didn't have absolute peace, but they had. Oh, this is the point I was getting into. So 𝗟𝘂 sounds like 𝗟𝘂, and for the Hopi, 𝗟𝘂 is the name of the great spirit, the creator, the solar creator. They're exactly the same vibration. 𝗟𝘂, 𝗟𝘂. And in fact, I did a study across many tribes, many ancient tribes, and you'll see this because according to 𝗍𝗻𝗄𝗎, the Egyptians had a tetragrammaton that meant I am that I am. And guess what it was? It was HWFW. Now notice that 𝗟𝘂 has two W's.
Instead of the W.
Instead of the W, they had an H, which is, again, you can't pronounce it, but it means the same thing. It means I am that I am. The great I am, universal, undivided consciousness of love, right? But when we took in the knowledge, yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
So there was more than one civilization. So there was more than one civilization that knew the YHWH, even though it was known in different symbols, I guess. And I was just going to add, like in Hebrew, there's so many names of God: Adonai, Yahweh. So each of gods have different characteristic, and through that characteristic, yes, you discern which is the true God and not the true God.
Well, see, the vibration, which again is not pronounceable, I call this study I'm doing called The Search for the Lost Sound, because we invented language. Now remember the mythic incident of the Tower of Babel, that humanity is divided into 72 languages. And again,
There's
the number
72.
Yeah, there's the number 72 again, which is a 432 number. Because watch this, Laura. Let me go in my calculator. Because again, Jesus had the 72 minor disciples. And so you go to calculator.
I was going to say, when we were talking about the tree of knowledge, I mean, it seems to relate to also the loss of a lot of our DNA and what they deem to be junk DNA, and that we're actually restoring the tree of life through integrating polarity instead of being in this duality. Okay, anyway.
Can you see my calculator?
Explain this. Yes, 144. So
So
144 is a significant number.
There's 144,000, saints in the Book of Revelation, and the 144 divided by an octave, which is 2, is 72. And 72 inches is the height of Jesus. It's actually 72.05 in the Shroud of Turin, which is exactly my height. So I'm the same height. So 72 inches squared is 5,184 inches divided by 12 inches per foot is 432. Did you see that, Laura?
Wow.
That is really wild. Wow.
There's your 432. So you take your 72 squared, which means times itself. So it's 5,184 inches divided by 12 inches per foot is 432. So
that's wild too, because I mean, doesn't that correspond with our 12-strand DNA that the number 12 has such significance as far as this, would you say? Or?
Exactly, Laura. So so again, the monument is perfectly harmonic to 432, and 432 is perfectly harmonic to the 144,000 and the height of Jesus in inches, which is it's actually a little more perfect than this, because it's 4, and the sun is 432,600 and something miles radius, right? So the 432 is everywhere. So again, I believe what happened is the monument was an angelic tuner that was given as a gift through the visions of George Washington, which is why it's called the Washington Monument. And the architects were guided to finish it. It was originally going to be 600 and something feet, but then how did it end up to be 555 feet, 5.125 inches? How did they do that? Because if it was 600 feet, its frequency would not be 432, it'd be something else. But that caused the awakening that gave America this advantage. You know, it was, again, Upper Eastern Canada that the telephone was born. Alexander Graham Bell eventually becomes, you know, Bell Labs was founded in his name. Everything happened at Bell Labs in New Jersey, everything. So you measure the monument's position to Bell Labs, and you'll see what happens. There's a radius that goes all the way into Eastern Canada, which is where the first F-wing fighter was developed, which was the Avro Arrow, and all those engineers got hired by Boeing to make, you know, to make fighters in the United States. There was a lot of brilliance that happened in Upper Eastern Canada, all within this energy wave, certain radius of the energy coming off of the monument, because it actually transmits around the entire planet, but it gets weaker and weaker and weaker with what's called the inverse square law at the distance. But now there's another amazing thing, because when you go and you search Egyptian obelisks, and you come to this one image. I'm going to see if I can find it. Otherwise I have to find it again, because in my, see, you've got to read the Forgotten Books of Eden, because in the Forgotten Books of Eden, which is a way longer mythic story of the Adam and Eve mythology, God gives Adam and Eve, when they take in this knowledge of good and evil, which caused them to go from singularity into duality, this unsolvable riddle called good and evil, which you can't solve because nobody agrees on anything. that's the nature. I know,
like somebody's evil is somebody else's goodness. I mean, it comes down to perception, and then the manipulation of humans is to create belief systems and indoctrination programs in order to create a perception of what the definition of good and evil is. Go ahead, Shiraz.
No, I love what you're saying. Love it.
Well, I was just gonna say it's relative. You're right? Whether something's good or evil is relative based on the situation and the outlook someone has.
Well, just like today, they'll say if you don't get vaccinated, you're evil. You're part of the problem.
So I was going to ask you about this, and not to throw you off of the flow that definitely go back to it. But do you feel that we have access to frequencies that can help to neutralize and offset the so-called mark of the beast, like that it's not as irreversible as people say? Because I don't personally feel that way, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, we have a doctor. I have to be careful when I say this. I have to put a disclaimer on this, that there's no way.
Say, like, we can go like this. We're going to avoid certain words and things.
Well, it's I'm not going to avoid certain words, but I'm going to tell you that this happened with a doctor that is one of my clients who uses all my technology on her patients. And I'm not going to give her name out to protect her, but she had all these clients come in who just got vaccinated and they were getting COVID symptoms. And she transmits the Washington Monument frequencies, and their symptoms, which are disabling them, are dropped dramatically. And again, the Monument frequencies, which we have on our website for $11.11, are 432 octaves, right? And they're timed perfectly. So you do this as an exercise for 7 minutes. And I was mind blown when she told me this, when this doctor told me this. I said, that seems impossible, that the symptoms, the negative symptoms from the vaccine reduced dramatically just from transmitting these frequencies into the subjects. But she did it over and over again. So
well, we have the other doctor, then I won't mention her name either, who says when a cell is at stasis, it's at 432 hertz from her findings. And so if this frequency is taking the body's cells to that stasis, then by naturally all disease is dissipating in that being then. Wouldn't that be so, David?
Well, see, again, you go back to the National Institute of Health study, which is where we kind of started today. If it can reduce heart tension, if it can reduce stress and even blood pressure in a simple test, what happens with repeated long-term use? Absolutely 432 tuned A, which is middle A. Again, when I say middle A, you can go up and down all the A octaves. So the Monument is a very high 432 A octaves. But again, because if you look at Pythagoras's, what does he call it? The monochord. When he uses a monochord, he keeps splitting the string in half, which is an octave, to go 1 octave down, or 1 octave up. So what I'm saying is that all 432 octaves are beneficial to human consciousness. That's what the National Institute of Health Studies says. So it doesn't surprise me that people who come in with physiological reactions would feel much better around these harmonic frequencies being transmitted into their nervous system. But I can tell you this honestly, Laura, I believe that I personally got COVID, and it happened after I did this huge event with Sasha Stone live. Literally the next day.
That was the Lazarus project that you recently
did. The first Lazarus Initiative project we did. Now our town has so little incidents, almost none. And it's my belief, I'm allowed to have this belief, that some type of microwave weapon was used on me, as per the CNN article, because the next day I got this splintering headache and I got a fever of 103. And I wasn't scared because, again, most people don't die from this. It's really amazing how they turn this into, oh my God, you're all going to die, when most people who naturally get the virus do not die. And in fact, my children, who are 5 and 10, didn't react at all, which I believe is because they already had it when this all started and we didn't know what it was. And it only lasted about a week and they got better. So that means they're immune, right? And then my wife, Crystal, about 2 weeks after I got these symptoms, she got a brutal headache and it lasted about a week, off and on, it was gone. For me, another week later, it came back, got the headache again, got the fever, and then it was completely gone. So that means I'm immune. So the point is, I'm not afraid of this freaking thing. I don't know why everyone is so afraid when we can
survival rate.
Why are they so afraid? You can beat this thing No freaking problem. In fact, my little daughter brought home croup, which is like whooping cough. And, you know, I never got sick. You know, I'm vegetarian for 45 years in my life. I've modified that recently, but I never got sick. But when I had kids, they go to school and they bring back all this stuff. So in Sedona, my daughter 𝗟𝘂𝗏 gave me freaking croup, which is like whooping cough. For 3 months, I hacked up blood. I was spitting up little bits of blood. 3 months, it ruined our whole winter. And then we moved to Canada. I got freaking whooping cough from her, and we both hacked away all that winter spitting up blood. The coronavirus was a freaking joke compared to croup. And I coughed like just tiny little coughs, right? Now, I'm not saying people aren't dying from this virus, wherever it came from.
Yeah, but they've been dying from tuberculosis and pneumonia.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is not anything new. They're just putting a microscope on things to mess with people.
Oh, yeah.
Psychological operation.
2 million a year worldwide. COVID did not even reach 2 million in its first year. We're in year 2 now. Pneumonia, flu combined kills over 3 million people a year worldwide. COVID did not equal that. Even still does not compare. So why are they doing this to us when our bodies know how to beat this stuff? And yep, some of us die. It's true. Some kids die of pneumonia. You know that half of the pneumonia deaths every year, and this is on this data is clearly available from all the health institutes and the World Health Organization, all of it. Almost half of those deaths are children, usually in undeveloped countries. Now, children will die of pneumonia in America every year. When a child dies of COVID, it's all over the news. Oh my God, a child died, you better vaccinate your kids. What do you mean? How many kids died in America of this supposed COVID? You tell me the total, and then tell me the total of kids that died of pneumonia last year and the year before and the year before.
Right. While human trafficking, child trafficking, pedophilia, and all this other stuff is literally pushed to the side so that we can obsess over something that.
Oh yeah, Laura, we got more people dying from suicide and fentanyl in the province of British Columbia than COVID. And yet COVID is all over the news, but once a year they tell us how many people died of fentanyl. Well, it's higher than COVID. So why are we all freaking out over a virus that 98% of you can beat? No problemo. No problemo. I beat it like nothing. So now I'm immune. I don't need to get vaccinated. None than my kids. It did nothing to them.
It wouldn't even make sense even because it's not even a real jab, you know? It's this whole mRNA.
I think they're making everyone terrified. Oh my God.
And the shedding, like, you know, it's like
India.
literally, it's very strategic. They're very clever. I gotta give them credit for that.
So freaking clever. Oh, this subject makes me mad because India is all over the news. They got 1.3 freaking billion people and they lost 200,000 people. Whoop-de-doo. Like, you're way overpopulated. We're all supposed to cry because you lost less people than pneumonia and the flu and TB kills combined. You lost less than that. So why are we all freaking out? Why? I mean, it makes me so mad. Just
shutting down the joy of, you know, going to just all the things that make people happy. They're literally taking away, masking us. You know, it's like,
and suicides are
what their solutions is what's creating the sickness, you know?
Yeah, so suicides are going up. Child mental, you know what their solution to the child mental depression because of the lockdowns in the schools is? Let's drug the kids. Let's give them some antidepressants and they'll be fine. Are you freaking kidding me? Kids don't even die from this. It's so rare that an American, Canadian, or European child will die to this compared to your background study on your pneumonia, your TB, and your flu.
And then they're censoring doctors and experts and literally saying it's conspiracy theory to even talk about like vitamins that we should be taking. I mean, it's like, if that's not enough to awaken people, then I'm sorry, you guys are way far gone, because this is not about going down a rabbit hole and needing to be red pilled. This is like common sense. Like, what is wrong?
Yeah, no, they proved today that this was on RT News that I think I posted this on my Facebook that the vaccine manufacturer has already made almost $1 billion. No, it's more than that. It's I have it here. It's pretty shocking.
How are they reinvesting it? I wonder.
Well, there was 2 articles in the RT. One was that
Bill Gates' a divorce court, I guess. No.
Pfizer's obscene $900 million profit from its COVID vaccine in 3 months proves capitalism. And then there was on Sputnik News, the most vaccinated nation in the world suddenly introduced restrictions after a surge in infection. How does the most vaccinated country in the world get a massive surge in infections if the vaccine is doing anything at all? Pretty stupid, huh? This is in 𝗂𝘂𝗶𝗆 was among the first countries in the world to reopen to international tourism after the first COVID wave last year. And now the Indian Ocean nation located off the coast of Africa has been vaccinating its population with China's Sinopharm vaccine. And now they're going into lockdown. And they're the most densely vaccinated country in the world. So what does that tell you? It's pretty obvious what's going on. You can't say it, but it's so freaking obvious what's going on. And again, all for a virus that I experienced. Now, I'm not saying that everyone is going to react to this thing as easily as I did, and I do personally know a couple of people who have died that were in their 70s. And so there are people dying from it, but when you look at the numbers, it doesn't compare to pneumonia, flu combined worldwide and TB. It does not compare to it. And you just got to look at those numbers and ask yourself, why are we doing this?
It's about as ridiculous as saying, okay, sexually transmitted diseases exist, so let's mask, culture. Yeah,
let's have everybody wear condoms and
everything that actually makes us sick. But no, they're not shutting down McDonald's. They're not shutting down pornography sites. They're not shutting down the Satan shoes or Cardi B's Woman of the Year. It's like, it's so like, how are people not seeing this? It's like,
no, it's really sad when you see it's the fear that's killing them out there. It's the fear. See, fear causes a spasm that tightens the heart muscle. And then the heart can't feel bliss because it's in this fear all the time. What if I get it? What if I don't? Then there's people who take the vaccine and die from it. Oh, that's an anomaly. And they bury the stories of the severe reaction. All they want right now is for you to get vaccinated. That's all they care about. They don't care how many of you die from it. They don't care how many of you are spreading it because you have this thing in you. They don't care how it mutates in your body and how your body will expel it. They just want to make money. And that's what my opinion is, because I've looked at data, I look at numbers, and I think anybody with intelligence looks at the numbers of all the things that kill human beings, right? And how many people die every year in California a year? What is the normal background death? It's huge, actually.
Drunk driving, and at the same time, there's bars everywhere, and they don't have campgrounds. They don't have valet, let's drive you home because you're drunk. The whole system is set up for us to literally be destroyed. And then they act like we're the problem. And that's the strategy.
They act like we're the problem because we like this was a problem in the military. I just saw recently is US troops don't want the vaccine. So now Biden is going to say you have to have the vaccine to be a US, be a US soldier or, be in the Marines. How can you force them? Why don't they want the vaccine? What do they know that we don't know? Why is he having a problem? Because you know why? Because a lot of them got sick and got over it because they're freaking tough, and it's really most people, we know this, don't react negatively to this virus. It's easy for them to beat it. So why are they putting all this fear in everybody? Why is Biden saying that his military has to receive this non-FDA approved, by the way, vaccine? I don't know.
And this masking stuff, it's insane. It's totally insane. That's why I got kicked off of Alaska Airlines. It's like, no, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm not going to wear a double mask and like, I'm out of here. See you guys. And well, they kind of escorted me out.
Yeah, no, there are studies that were done on masks pre-COVID. I'm only interested in the pre-COVID studies because there's no agenda. And they proved that there was after 30 minutes, the humidity in your breath, it starts to block the pores in the mask. And then your oxygen level goes down and your CO2 goes up. So they weren't designed for hours and hours of use.
Sorry, what was that? And then Shiraz, you need to like chime in here. So sorry, keep going with that though. You said the CO2, like
the pre-COVID studies. These are all published in the National Institute of Health, and they did studies on masks with pregnant women. They were very interested in the data on pregnant women, and basically. This is pre-COVID National Institute of Health studies. They're one of the best places to look at non-biased studies, just like they did the study on 432 versus 440. Now, they don't have an opinion on the data. They merely publish the data. And the data, as I know scientists, they'll always pick the lowest number. So if your oxygen dropped by even 15%, they'll pick the number that's the least threatening to put in the study. That's how scientists work, because they want to be conservative. So they won't pick the most deadly number. They'll pick, but it's very obvious. Use your head. If you're breathing through this thing, you're filling the pores up with your humidity. So therefore you're blocking the pores over time as humidity increases in your breath. And therefore that explains some of the rashes the nurses are getting. But you're increasing CO2 and dropping oxygen. Now, it's true at sea level, there's more oxygen than there is in the city of Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City, but because oxygen drops with altitude. And it doesn't mean that a slight oxygen drop may or may not be detrimental to your health. But if you're used to breathing a certain percentage of oxygen at your elevation, and it drops because of the mask and the CO2 goes up, that's not good. So what I do when I go into the health food store, I go in there, get all my stuff, and I'm out of there in 10, 15 minutes. So I don't have my mask on. I don't wear their masks. I use bamboo. So all my kids and all of us, we use natural fabrics because we got to go in and get our food, right? And get our stuff. And you want to keep in my opinion, is don't wear the thing. If your kids, my kids in school don't have to wear masks here. In fact, we've had no outbreaks. Yeah, we don't have any outbreaks. So Laura,
you don't have any what?
We don't have any.
Yeah, the only comment I really have in regards to this subject matter is my parents recently got vaccinated. Now they're at home all the time. My dad's in a wheelchair. And they came home to vaccinate them. They don't go anywhere. So, how are they ever going to get COVID in the first place? And nor does anyone come over ever. So that was my thing. Like, why did somebody have to come over to our home to vaccinate my parents?
Right.
No kidding. A lot of family and friends. I went through a major mourning process. I'm actually just getting out of it. So anyway, what are your thoughts, David? And then I know we got to close. I could talk to you guys like for.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that in my opinion, as a trained scientist who worked with Nobel Prize winning and other prize winning physicists at the highest level of the United States, scientific community, and having personally read hundreds of scientific reports and have personally met scientists that quit their jobs because they were forced to alter data. I know scientists who work for top defense contractors, and most of the data they were forced to alter was environmental pollution data, by the way. So when I look at scientific studies, I look at who paid for them, what the intention of the study is. That's why I'm interested in pre-COVID mask studies. And I don't think any studies have been done on long-term use with children. what happened in our local school system, which is elementary school, is they had this idea that the kids might wear the masks in school, and within days they took them all off. They couldn't breathe. And the teachers had to accept it. So what the teachers did is they wore masks as much as they could, and they put kids in study groups, and they can't go outside of their study group. But what's hilarious about that is, look, we're a small town, 10,000 people, just like where we used to live in Sedona. And they have all these measures, and yet tons of people in Sedona got exposed to COVID, but very few people died. In our town, I don't know one person who's died in our town, 10,000 of COVID. It hasn't been in the news anyway. And there was this one guy who put on Facebook that he had a funeral, and people came from the big city of Vancouver, and he got COVID. And he said, you get a severe headache, a fever, just like I got. And then 2 weeks later, they let him out and he could run around town again. Well, I was fine 2 weeks later too. I didn't need to get tested because I didn't want them to stick those things up my nose. I wore my mask everywhere. I didn't actually go anywhere actually for that 2 week period. I stayed in the car, and everybody in my family's healthy. They responded minorly to whatever this thing is. But I just can't believe all the fear. I look at people and go, look at the data, look at the numbers. The older population, if you have pre-existing health issues, wear a mask, but don't force everyone to do this, because most of us know how to beat this thing, and we don't need your stupid vaccine. We just don't need it.
They could shine the light or microscope on anything to fear. We
Sure.
are always at risk. We could die at any moment. Like, I've choked on.
Look at the number. You're right.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die from tortilla chips because I just choked on it. It's like, or
well, we have more people dying,
surrounded by the threat of death. I mean, they really hooked people in ways
got us
that
into
are
fear.
shocking.
I look at people's faces in our town with their masks on, walking around outside with their mask, and I just can't. Life is not worth living to me if you see people committing suicide in huge numbers, and you see children becoming mentally ill and they need drugs so they can follow this agenda. We can't be that afraid of death. We can't, because we're all going to die. We're all going to.
Actually a wonderful thing. Not to say
wonderful thing. We should be seeing it as an absolutely wonderful thing. We shouldn't
this is a big test, right? Where people are going through a life review, and some people are not ready to meet the creator because they still have stuff to work out, that it's easy for them to just land in the fear thing and like, oh, I need to stay alive, because maybe they haven't reconciled their ancestral patterns, the programmings that they're holding, the indoctrination that, there's, I think their fear is that they haven't found themselves, and they're afraid of,
and let those people, look, I say, let the people who feel threatened by this thing wear a mask everywhere, but don't force us all to do it, because we can naturally become immune, because most of us, they say 20% of people don't even react at all to the coronavirus.
What about the fact that people who do get vaccinated can be an effect on those who haven't gotten vaccinated? What about that fact? I mean, they should.
Nobody's
also,
looking at that, Rose. Nobody's admitting that. Nobody's admitting that when you're vaccinated, you're slightly contagious for 2 weeks. Nobody's admitting that what's causing the news.
But if you get a flu shot, then you get the flu as a result of getting that flu shot, and you can affect someone else getting the flu. So absolutely. Why is it the same applied
right.
here?
My brother Doug took his first flu shot last year. He said, I've never taken the flu shot. He said, I got the worst flu I've ever had in my life. He said, I would never do it again.
Only one time I took a flu shot, I was paralyzed for 6 months. So
paralyzed.
Man, that's crazy. I had double pneumonia one time, and I, went to the hospital, but I wasn't like, oh, let me tell whatever CDC or whoever to make my problem everybody else's problem. I'm like, I'm going to heal it. I never went to doctors, and I just breathed. It was my breath that healed me, right? And shutting off.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Not the way to heal.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that you breathe. I do this deep breathing exercise every 2 months for 30 days in a row. I breathe for 45 minutes. I've been doing this for 11 years. You take a breath in your belly, roll it up into the chest, sips of air, expand the lung capacity. Let it out. Now do that for 45 minutes. You get really high. I get so blissed out. I do this every day for 30 days, every 2 months for the last 11 years. I believe lung power, what you just said, Laura, triggered this, is the key to fighting many different lung viruses and illnesses, like you had double pneumonia.
That's what healed me. I was in a place that had like black, oh gosh, no, it was a flood zone, so like black fungus or like something like molds. Thank you.
Oh, black mold. Oh my
bunch
God.
of people over here.
Mold.
They're my family. Hello, guys. But yeah, and like I never really had gotten sick before, but the only thing that healed me was taking really deep breaths.
Right. I think that's
almost anything.
A lot of sense, because a lot of people who don't work at home like I do are wearing masks for long hours a day, and they need, when they get home, to do some deep breathing exercises to really build that oxygen and nitrogen, because you're breathing in oxygen and nitrogen and other trace gases. You need all of it, and you got to expand that lung capacity. So when you breathe in this powerful breath, hold the breath, and then repeat. I actually have a guided meditation track that takes you, the first 15 minutes you're breathing through the 7 chakras, next 15 minutes you're breathing through all the body parts, and the last 15 minutes you're just breathing into infinite consciousness. And when you do this breathing technique, which is really powerful, very different than the Wim Hof method, by the way. I've been doing this method for 11 years. So I don't know when Wim Hof started, but his technique is good. And going in the ice water is probably fantastic. And I love what Wim Hof's about. I love his life story is incredible, actually, because he has children with the love of his life, and she becomes massively depressed and jumps from an 8-story building and kills herself. And he discovers this breath technique and this freezing water technique, and he becomes a Superman. And he says, I can teach millions of people how to conquer depression, but I couldn't stop what was happening to my own wife. Couldn't stop it. But breathing, these deep breathing techniques, his breath is a little bit faster than the one that I do. But the one I do, you expand the chest instead of going, which is what he's doing, or I mean, he's doing like more of a breath like that. But when you breathe in through the nose and you take those sips of air, keep expanding your lung capacity, will this give you more power to beat these viruses? It makes logical sense. I mean, we're allowed to draw logical conclusions, people. We don't have to listen to all the BS we're fed every day over this thing. But I
get censored. It's like, oh, it's so threatening to, the little parasites and vampires. Well, guess what? You can't shut us down ever. Actually, you make us stronger, because the warrior energy gets stronger in the face of adversity. So thanks for.
You're right. Absolutely. Or look at you. I mean, I remember you had like 80,000 followers in Facebook, and then they shut down your whole freaking Facebook account, and they shut down your YouTube channels, and then you just bounce back, and the people who love you and follow you, and you're so courageous. I love it that you would challenge everything. I love it that you don't just take everything at face value. That's what makes us intelligent. The right to question authority creates a dynamic and a discussion. Why should we just believe everything they tell us? Shut up and wear your mask and get vaccinated. Why? Are we your experimental guinea pigs to give us something? We don't even know what the heck's in that shot. Why do I want to give this to my kids when I've watched my kids beat croup, whooping cough, which are far worse than this thing is in my experience of it, in quote, in my experience of it. It is nothing compared to 𝗵𝗂𝗶𝗶. But they want us to, live in fear and terror,
Crystal's on her way home. Do you want a cheeseburger?
Yeah, I don't do well with authority, but I'll be friends with it, but don't try and control me. We can be buddies, we can fist bump. It's like, all right, but don't you dare act like you own me and compromise my better intention and think that you know better than what is coming through from spirit. So I know we probably got to close, but any thoughts, Cherise? Beautiful Rose name. I love it. I love your name. Where are you from? Like, where's that name? Like, where's your
the name's Persian, and it means Shah means king, as in Shah of Iran, etc. Rose means day, so it's day of the king or day of the Lord.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Wow, how beautiful is that? That's really cool. Talking about frequency. Yeah. So, all right. So I know we got to close, and it's just been so much fun hanging out with you guys, and I want to create more of this. So you have this Lazarus project, and things going on with the monument and just really like shifting the frequency on a level that people are going to be able to tune into without even realizing that it's even there, because you're opening up those channels. It's like your Stargate opener. Like, what do you want to share before we close, both of you, to help people, find you and, kind of like give a little bit of a synopsis or a summary of these projects that you have in the works?
Well, I want to say that, I've been a person who's not satisfied with believing in God concepts. I'm a person who wants to meet God. And so I started meditating every single day, which I've been doing for 45 years. I'm turning 60 this August. So for me, that's a big one. Being a dad with a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old at that age. But
insane, because you've definitely like defied the aging process. Anyway, keep going.
So what I've found in studying with so many mystics, so many yogis, yoginis, so many enlightened masters traveling to India is, what is the best way to reach the supreme inner bliss state? And it's a combination of the breath work and doing these frequency exercises. If you go to my website, 𝗏𝘍𝘐𝗍, which is spelled SEREDA.co, like company, and you go to /initiation, that's a good place to start, because you can get the 432 octaves. So you do a little bit of breathing, as I did mention before, and then you participate with your voice using headphones. Don't use your iPhone speaker, because it can't produce low tones. And you make a ah or a u or an o sound that matches the pitch that you hear. And when you do the tones, it vibrates through piezoelectricity, all the crystals in your physiology. And when your crystals are vibrating in your bones, they emit piezoelectric energy. And you start to realize that what I found is the missing element in meditation that causes a person to go into super ecstatic bliss states is the process of doing very precise toning work added to breath. And after you do the tones, and when you sit in the silence, you can feel all this incredible expanding energy waves. And eventually this supremely sublime ecstasy starts to appear in the consciousness. I found, with all the suffering in the world, because I do this every day, I get up and I meditate. There's so much ecstasy. I don't care how much crap is going on in the world. You rise above all of it. You're actually laughing at all of it, because they could take away everything from me, and I still know how to go into this supreme ecstasy. And no drugs, no plants, no cigarettes. Your body has within it, your nervous system has within it the capacity to produce ecstasy levels and natural DMT by doing these precise breathing and frequency techniques. So you start there, and then, on my website, at 𝗏𝘍𝘐𝗍.co, you can eventually get into, higher levels of frequency transmitting products to counteract the negative frequencies coming in from the 5G, and the 4G and the Wi-Fi, all those distorting frequencies, you can have, you know, one of my coil systems in your house or your office and go through a menu of literally thousands of frequency options and say, today I want to vibrate at this frequency, right? And in fact, this flower of life that's on my t-shirt, we did this test, this study. I actually want to show this really quick, this graphic, where we took water and we exposed it to the sound of the sun, Russian tap water. And we did the Masaru Emoto test. This test was done for me in Russia. And let me just go to share screen, and you click on this image, and you can see what the structure of tap water looked like on the left. And then after exposing it to the sound of the sun, and we froze it instantaneously, beautiful restructuring of the water. And guess what we are? We are 87% water.
Yeah, we get a lot of water. And yeah, and that's why like the distortion frequencies that you were talking about and the false news and all these things that infect our creative channels literally contaminate our water.
Right, which is us. So this happens in your body.
What's that?
This is what's happening in your body, this picture. Your water, which is 87% of you, is a mess because you're being bombarded by all these negative frequencies. So when you do the frequencies that I provide, you reharmonize your bioelectric structure into perfection, and your mind experiences this. This is where the mind goes from depression and chaos into perfect bliss consciousness. So
it builds over time, right, David? It builds over time as you work with the frequencies. They resonate in you and stay with you over time. So as things come into your life that are negative, they just bounce off you because you build up this structure in you that's so much more vibratorily resonating positively.
But you got to do this work every day. You can't just do it 3 times and then quit. I mean, it's got to become your life. You can spend 7 minutes in the morning and 7 minutes at night with the tones and then a little bit of breathing. And then the longer you can apply to the meditation process. And I actually have a whole course, a year 1 and a year 2 breathing and toning and meditation course.
You know, David, because I took music lessons, I've had music teachers who've tried to get me to do toning exercises to build my voice, right? And I never really stuck to those. But when I started working with your exercises and your quantum regenesis course, because they were helping me on a spiritual level as well as my voice physically, I'm doing them. And as I'm doing them, and because I have your devices, when you listen to me even talk, my voice is more passionate, more powerful than it used to be. It's so amazing working with your frequencies.
That's true, Laura.
That's so cool.
I had a really lousy singing voice, you know, and now so I can go. And then when you do these toning exercises, your energy moves into those beautiful octaves and it becomes part of your personality. So
because the notes are your chakras, are they not?
Well, we tune up ourselves, right? With our thoughts. And some people are like, oh, I can't sing, or I'm not an artist. It's like, we all are, you know, there's just like one little like barrier, you know, there could be somebody who's like, oh, I'm ADD, I'm dyslexic, and I can't do shit. They break through, then all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, they're a blossoming garden. They're a creative genius. You're a creative genius, and you know that. So of course you're going to be able to sing. You can do anything. You're fucking David 𝗂𝘗𝗏.
Anybody can sing. If I can sing, because I wasn't born with a singing voice, and now I sing to my kids because I've been doing these tones for years. You find that each tone within your voice and your ability to produce sounds is actually part of your personality. And my littlest one, Astaria, makes these little dolphin sounds, really high squeaky sounds. And I get out my frequency meter in my phone and I measure my daughter's vocal frequencies with this. Let me just show you this because I know we got to go. Let me just show you real quick. You get this thing called frequency meter and you can see the numbers. Oh, so you see they're jumping all over the place. You can see what frequency your voice is at any given time.
Absolutely.
So, kind of fun.
Is a frequency measurement device you have? Is that
well, it's an app. You just get it on. You get it in the app
or?
store. No, you get it in the app store. It's called Frequency Meter, and it's just an app. And you turn it on, and it'll show you the frequency that birds are singing at. This is my phone, so that's just
right. So you can check the frequency of things. So when you hear a bird chirp, you can actually.
Yeah, you can see the frequency the birds chirping at, or your children, and of course, male voices are different than female voices.
Like somebody's being like a bitch or a total douche. It's like.
Yeah, then you can measure the frequency of what bitch sounds like.
There's good bitch and bad bitch, but yeah.
Right, there's good bitch because there's some good bitching that needs to go on. And
yeah, it's like, you know, we need to vent. We need to be real. It's like, to me, true enlightenment is like, can we be authentic? I mean, are we supposed to just be sitting here levitating while we're like dealing with the most hardcore, like.
Right, that's part of our freedoms, the right to gripe to our government about our grievances towards our government, and they want to take that away. They want to say, no, you can't complain. Everything we do is perfect. Meanwhile, you got millions of homeless people living on the streets of LA and New York and Chicago and every other American city. So you're not doing a good job if you have that problem. So, but you're not allowed to gripe now because you're a terrorist because you're griping.
You'll have nothing and you'll be happy. That whole deal. It's just like, you know, this authority, this abuse of authority sitting on Mother Earth, you know, whose consciousness is so nurturing, connected to cosmic and natural law and the divine blueprint of what some might call 𝗍𝘗𝗍𝗍 and the whole, you know, electromagnetic spectrum and how that opens up to us. Who do these mother bleep think they are? It's like... You almost have to laugh, but it's like, anyway, oh my gosh.
Oh, I know, it's unbelievable. How did the dumbest people get to the top and the smartest people get to the bottom? And tell me how that happened.
I know. Well, it's going to turn around, and it's conversations like this and just sticking close to each other and building community and always.
Laura, I think you should run for president of the United States.
What?
I think you should run for president of the United States.
I think you should. And, oh, thank you for having that confidence in me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I have no brain for the government system would have to collapse because it's not a structure that I can relate to. But
no, the structure was destroyed. I mean, all of our freedoms are being eroded, and the Constitution is no longer, you know, upheld, and
the fraudulence, you know, of the election.
I mean, the point when it all went wrong, right? We did have a point when everything was rising positively, and something changed that. So let's talk about how we get back now.
I know. I would say after like, you know, the Kennedy assassination and Eisenhower warning us about the military industrial complex, and then every leader since then has not held the integrity of the original stuff that you were talking about, David, with, you know, from, you know, 1492 to 1776, or I hope I got the dates correct.
1492 to 1776, and then Washington becomes the first president of the United States. Let's see the date on that. I mean, I know we're going over our time limit, but you got to see this, people, because America was a British colony, and you beat the British, and then they came in with their bankers, and they took away all your freedoms, but still America triumphed and led the world with the greatest inventions of the history of the world that all blossomed the moment the monument was erected. So George Washington, president year. So the Battle of Independence is 1776, and he's president 1789, your first president. So that's just a few years later, right? That's like 1776 to 1789, right? And the monument comes after that, right? So he has this vision on the battlefield, this super enlightened vision of the two angels that showed him the future, and that America would encounter 3 great battles from within, and the third one would almost destroy it, but it doesn't win. Doesn't win. In the prophecy that the angel gave him. So There you go. Thank you, Laura, for being here and listening and, sharing this information with your people, and God has blessed you forever. And thank you for fighting and taking the heat and the beatings and the lashings and the whippings. And what you've been through in your life and your family is tremendous, that you're still with us in a positive. Thank you.
Well, you guys are
you, Laura.
you inspire me, actually. Being friends with you is such an honor, and I'm so grateful. So, knowing that we are connected and that you give me the time of day and you show me the love and respect that you do is like literally like so healing to my heart. And I'm so grateful. And I've had so much fun talking to you guys.
We love you so much, Laura, so much. You've done so much for all of humanity. I mean, I've been listening to you for a long time, and you've done so much to bring light to everyone. And I'm not sure what it's done for them, but I'm sure it's made a difference.
Aw. Well,
imagine if there was nobody like you out there. I think everyone would just go down the black hole. They just go right down.
Well, we're a team, and I learned so much from both of you, and I just look forward to doing this again. And I mean, my mind was blown.
Well, next time we're going to
wear a hat, so my brain pieces that are being blown, like, let's contain them. Like, I don't want to be picking it up like dog poop. It's like,
yeah, next time we're going
my mind. You guys are genius. You're incredible. Sorry, what?
Next time we're going to star system communication with my new partner in this, Jimmy. What's Jimmy's last name, Cherose?
His Blanchette, Jimmy Blanchette.
Jimmy Blanchette and David 𝗬𝗍𝗍 are working on actual contact with the Galactic Federation using radio frequencies. And this is what we'll talk about next with you when we're ready. We'll introduce you to Jimmy.
I'm here, and we'll do more of this, and grateful to be connected with you guys, and I've really enjoyed our time together. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and much love, my wonderful soul family.
Have a good night, Laura.
You as well.
David.
Bye, guys.
David.